Welcome to Cybercast. I'm Amy Kluber, and I'm at AFCEA West, speaking with Rear Admiral Christopher Bartz, Assistant Commandant of C4 at the U.S. Coast Guard. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Great. Thanks for having me.
So start us off. What are your top 3 IT priorities, and how do you see that contributing to developing information superiority for the Coast Guard?
Great question. So I think, what we've done is we have just reorganized our IT organization. We have a program office that is aligned to programs and products. Our program office is aligned to our service center, which is our delivery point. And so when we made that transition, we lost some personnel that had been there for a while, and we gained others, right? So we have a new group of people. Some are familiar with the Coast Guard, some are not familiar with the Coast Guard. Many are former DoD employees. And so really it's kind of I think the first thing is a talent management strategy. And the way that we're approaching that is in our new Commandant strategy, she says to be brilliant at the basics. And so kind of really letting the workforce understand what the Coast Guard problem set is, because they might be unfamiliar with that. Being really good at program management. So understanding how we're resourcing, how we're prioritizing, what kind of outcomes should we expect? How do you speak to your operational customers? Like if you're talking in ones and zeros, they're not going to understand that. You have to talk in terms that they can understand. Hey, I'm going to either get the ship underway or not. This ship is either mission capable, or it's partially mission capable, or it's not mission capable. So having those kinds of conversations. So that talent management's a little bit different than what most people think of, right? They think of recruitment, onboarding, training, retention. I'm thinking more about the training piece and how do we, not just training, but reps and sets, right? So we're proficient. So that's the first one, talent management. I think the second one would be along the lines of programmatics is understanding where our resources are going and how those resources are being prioritized. And then the third one is being able to have a risk-based discussion with programs, with operators to maybe not gain consensus, but at least gain transparency on what we're resourcing and what we're not resourcing, right? And where we're taking risks. So, for example, when I talk to my peer, who's an admiral in charge of the regulatory part of the Coast Guard, he's got a lot of needs. Those needs are not related to ships, boats, airplanes. He needs IT capabilities in order to do his job. He is engaging with the public. He is engaging with industry. He needs IT tools in order to do that. And so I need to understand what his needs are, and he needs to understand what I'm resourcing him to. And we need to be able to talk about the difference between the needs and what's actually being resourced. And talking about that in terms of risk. What aren't you capable of doing? What does that mean to the public? What does that mean to your organization? What does that mean to Congress? Those are all important conversations to have that because we haven't had that resourcing transparency in the past, that we need to have those risk conversations. So those are my top three priorities.
Okay. Lots to unpack there, but it's definitely really important in this day and age of getting tech modernized, but also removing barriers and keeping things secure. So great insight there. Does the Coast Guard have a contribution to the DoD's overall concept of JADC2, and kind of what's your data readiness approach to that?
Right. So I'll talk a little bit about the difference between DoD and DHS we operate as part of the DoD information network. So we take all operational commands from the DoD. I meet with the DoD CIO. I'm counted as one of his, principals. If there's a cyber direction, cyber task order, anything coming out of the NSA or Cybercom or DISA, we have to abide by that. But even though I'm part of the DoD network and we're required by law to be interoperable with DoD, I work for DHS, right? I'm a DHS component. And so I have to also abide by their policies as well. And so they give me my budget. So I don't directly engage with what's going on in JADC2. I am very well read into it. I understand what the Navy's doing. I'm on board. But that being said, we're kind of doing our own version of JADC2. And I think a lot of the services are kind of doing that too. So when I think of our JADC2 initiative, it's all about data transport, access to data, information sharing, security of data. And we have a lot of systems that were level 1 acquisitions that we bought, lock, stock, and barrel. And there was, even I think if there was a contractual obligation for those type 1 or level 1 systems to interoperate, it would have been too expensive. And so I think the way that we're looking at it is kind of melting the iceberg. Let's figure out what our architecture should look like. It should be based around an integrated data environment, a big data platform. We should have interface standards so that if you buy a sensor or if you contract for a sensor, that sensor should be able to comply with the standards so you can plug it in to our C2 ecosystem. I think that's the spirit of JADC2. And my hope is that we stay away from those level 1 acquisitions and we can have more of an agile, lower level, maybe acquisitions or even procurements. So when we think about our Rescue 21 system, right, that's a communication system on the VHF band. And it also has a component where it's trying to triangulate on vessels based on different towers and things like that. It's really kind of, it's not simple technology, but it's technology that's prevalent, right? The cell phone, you do that with cell phone towers and things like that. Maybe in the future, it shouldn't be we buy, a level 1 type Rescue 21 VHF communication system. Maybe we buy a bunch of radios. We install them on towers. We plug those into the integrated data environment. We plug in other signals like AIS signals. Maybe we take readily available commercial data that could be integrated into that data environment and provide a more robust picture for situational awareness, right? So if you're at a command center, you have a kind of a Rescue 21 screen, you have an AIS screen, you have cameras, you have things, and not in depending on what room you're in, you may see different pictures. So there's no place where it's kind of bringing all that data together. And I think that's where we're going. It's not JADC2 per se, but it's definitely has the same intent. And so I think that's our contribution to JADC2.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense, especially when you're talking about, the two, it's a very similar mission to defense, but Homeland, it does have a lot of interplay there. So that does make a lot of sense.
Yeah. So our MDA requirement, our maritime domain awareness requirement, is from the coastline out to the edge of the 200-mile exclusive economic zone. That's nearly 20 million square nautical miles. That's a lot of ground to cover. And, so we got to figure out, there's that risk conversation. What can we afford, right? Where should we really be looking at to gain situational awareness? Do we need to do it over 20 million square miles, or, what's the balance there?
Right. So Deputy CIO Brian Campo did tell me that the Coast Guard is planning to launch a software factory. Mm-hmm. So can you walk me through how this will enhance cybersecurity at the Coast Guard?
Sure. So let me just talk a little bit about software factory and the fact that it is, there are other services, there are other organizations that are building their own software factories. We kind of looked at I think we looked at the Air Force to see if we could get in with them. And we made the decision to go with our own organic version. A lot of that has to do with, our interaction with the public. We need to be able to have public access for some things. And so that's one of the reasons why we looked at it. But it's basically buying, a space in the cloud that has, its own security measures within it, and we'll have teams, and we haven't kind of figured out the teams and how do you hire the teams, or what contract do you use for the teams, or would you even say if you were an operational commander and you had some money and maybe you buy your own team. We haven't figured that out yet. But, there's a lot of flexibility built in there. As long as you build on our secure cloud space, right, you can, kind of the sky's the limit. But, as we talked at my last panel, you don't want to kind of a proliferation of that. I think some redundancy is okay, but you don't want to have a million different apps, some get used, some don't get used, some supersede others. There's a governance piece to that. But as far as cybersecurity goes, so the theory, and we have not gotten the ATO yet, so I can't tell you if this is going to work or not. That's up to the AO, the authorizing official. But the theory is, if the team is certified to operate in the software factory, then the product that they make will be cyber secure. Now, one of the things that we'll have to kind of walk through is, how does the AO verify that? Those are the discussions that we're having. But and then when you're hiring a team, you got to either hire a certified team, or you got to hire a team that needs to get certified. And so, how do you work through that? I think those are all questions that are unanswered. The goodness in the software factory is that you get to DevSecOps, right? You can get, lightweight, or, just microservices for systems that, are kind of monolithic right now. You can kind of really scope down to something that's small, it's agile, it's reusable, and it's secure. And that's kind of different than the direction that we've been going, right? I think it's pretty common in industry right now that's microservices is kind of the way to go. We're usually a few years behind everybody else, which is good because there are others that are kind of paving the way for us.
They can make the mistakes first.
They can make the mistakes. As long as we use the lessons learned, right? We shouldn't be making the same mistake twice, but I'm okay with not being on the bleeding edge.
Sure. Well, in your prior role, you were at U.S. Cyber Command. Is there anything from that role that kind of informs your CIO role now as you approach cybersecurity and tech in the Coast Guard?
Right. So I was a Cybercom J7, I was in charge of all the exercises and training. how to get from someone that's just entering the cyber force all the way up to fully certified operator, exploitation analyst. There's 17 different roles within the cyber workforce. So, how do you make those? And then the exercise piece is how do you continue to, hone your skills and be the most proficient cyber force possible. So it was very operationally focused. It was focused on the adversary, right? And so it was an extremely dynamic environment. And I would say that, there was a lot of pressure to get ready. Readiness was the coin of the realm, right? And so I moved from that kind of very dynamic environment that was always changing, where we were responding to the adversary every day, and into a more programmatic job with a chance to really kind of look out strategically and see, what are our problems now? Where do we want to go? My predecessor, Rear Admiral Dave Dermanelian, did just this amazing job kind of setting me up for success, setting the organization up for success. I think under his tenure, we increased the IT budget by about 30%. And so he gave me the mold, the clay, all the building blocks. Now we're just really trying to refine what had already been done. So you're given a whole bunch of money to recapitalize. It's, but you cannot satiate the environment, right? There's always going to be requirements from the 11 statutory missions, from all the business systems, HR, finance, engineering, logistics, and then, all the cybersecurity and zero trust requirements. So, we just talked at my last panel about it's a risk discussion. How much zero trust can I afford? I don't think I can fully implement zero trust. I don't have the budget for that. So,
but it's a mindset, right?
Right. Well, where do you take risk, and where do you invest in capability? That's I think that was kind of one of the things that I talked about as my top 3 priorities. So having that risk discussion, it proliferates through everything that I do, and every activity that I have each day is ultimately comes down to what are we going to do and what are we not going to do? And those are hard conversations to have. The what are we not going to do? That can go all over the place, right? You can gold plate a what are we not going to do and make it seem like you're carrying a whole bunch of risk. But what are we not going to do that's tolerable, I guess? So those are the conversations that I'm having. I think that's the difference between my cybercom job and my job as a CIO. One was much more operational. This job is much more programmatic and strategic. So I'm really excited. I love this job. I'm very happy where I'm at, and just, glad to serve.
Awesome. Well, this was a great look into some of how you're thinking about tech at the Coast Guard, and how you're kind of juggling, the 2 different sides with DHS and DoD, and really fascinating conversation. So thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
Cybercast, along with GovCast and HealthCast, is a production of GovCIO Media and Research. For more podcasts and to check out the other shows, head to govciomedia.com. Watch out for new episodes released every Tuesday and Wednesday across our shows. You can follow all of them on your favorite podcast platform. And if you like what you heard, make sure to let us know by leaving a review. And if you have any topics you think we should look into, contact us at newsletter@govcio.com.